Once again, it's Brian and Kevin, the Horror Guys.
Episode 92.
92, where we're going to talk about movies, and this week is Anthology Week.
We've got 5 different anthologies and somewhere around 20-some different stories to discuss.
Lots of little stories.
Lot going on. Yeah, we're going to start out with The Monster Club from 1981. When was the last time you saw a Shadmock or a Humghoul? We'll continue with Tales from the Campfire 3 from 2020. We'll then look at Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, way back in 1965. Then we'll see XX, double X, not triple, from 2015. And we'll finish up with Tales of Halloween, a mega anthology from 2015.
That's a lot of stuff to talk about.
It is a lot of stuff to talk about.
Let's start talking about it, eh?
But first,
what?
This episode is brought to you by the number 3.
3?
3 HorrorGuys.com guides are available now.
Oh, yeah.
We've got the HorrorGuys.com Guide to Universal Studios Shock Theater, which has 52 Shock Theater movies from the 1920s, 30s, and 40s on it. In it. And it follows up with the HorrorGuys.com Guide to Universal Studios Son of Shock, with an additional 40-some movies. So if you're into the Shock Theater films, these 2 books will get you 99 stories to talk about. And then we've got the new one, HorrorGuys.com Guide to Hammer Horror Films.
It's Hammer time.
Brand new, just recently out, and it's got 69 Hammer horror films. So it's the biggest of the 3 books easily.
Christmas is coming up, and these would make the perfect gift for everyone you know.
The gift of terror. The gift of Hammer. The gift of shock. Yeah.
Yeah.
All available in paperback or ebooks wherever you get your books. And there's links in the show notes if you want to pick them up at Amazon. And why wouldn't you?
That's right. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. So let's go back in time and take a look at our oldest anthology first, Dr. Terror's House of Horrors.
1965.
It's older than either of us.
Very British. This one was a British horror movie.
Yeah, it's not a Hammer film, although it certainly looks like one.
It has that feel, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
it does.
Yeah.
Well, it's got Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing
Well,
on it.
yeah, there you
That
go.
right there would do it.
Mm-hmm.
Directed by Freddie Francis, also a very common Hammer name. Written by Milton Subotsky. Stars Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, and Neil McCallum. And Neil has been grateful for 65 years of being in the same running with those 2 guys, even though his career is... Who?
He's not a household name like the other ones, for sure.
Yeah, this one is an hour and 38 minutes, and it's available on Blu-ray. You can get there's a link in the show notes to take you to that place, Amazon, and pick up an affiliate link of that film. So what'd you think of this one?
I thought it was very good. I was very entertained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
None of the stories were terribly long. They were just right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 5 men board a train, and they're all assigned to share the same compartment. Next time they'll take individual coaches.
And it's a small, it's just one of the little compartments, and it's kind of crowded.
Yeah, meant for like four people.
Yeah,
it's
four ideal. So there's 5 of them, but wait, there's a 6th man comes along too.
Creepy looking old guy with an accent, and it's not a particularly common accent. It's like made up, but
generically, European.
Yeah. Well, the old man nods off to sleep and drops his bag, and we see that he's carrying tarot cards. Well, he wakes up and explains that his name is Dr. Shrek, master of astrophysics.
And
I don't think that word means what he thinks it means.
This is Peter Cushing, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
And Shrek explains that his name translates to terror in English. So they joke that his name is Dr. Terror. Yeah, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he calls his deck My House of Horrors. So there you go. There's the name of the film. Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. It's really his little tarot card deck.
He carries it with him.
Yeah, there's not a real house. So he offers to give each of the men a tarot reading, and most of them don't believe in any of this stuff, but they go with it anyway. So the first man, he taps the cards 3 times, he shuffles, and then he presents their destinies one at a time.
First up, the werewolf.
Ooh. Well, Jim Dawson, the first man, is an architect. And there's this rich old woman, Mrs. Biddulph, who wants him to fix up her house. His family lived in that house for centuries before he had to sell the house, so he's very familiar with this place. He used to own this house. The servant Valda immediately starts acting all creepy. We don't know why. Well, the owner of the house wants a wall torn down, and this is going to require quite a bit of inspection on Jim's part. It might be a load-bearing wall. He knocks a hole in the wall and finds a coffin inside.
That ain't right.
That hasn't happened here in months,
Yeah.
I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Well, the old servant Caleb explains that this must be the tomb of Cosmo Valdemar, the werewolf. You know, if you're going to be a werewolf, Cosmo Valdemar.
Is that an awesome name or what?
Yeah. Well, he once swore the house belonged to him, and that he would someday return. Jim says that can't be true since this plaster is new.
Something going on.
Well, they dig it out. Once they've left the room, we see it open and someone crawls out of the coffin. Jim and Caleb return and find large dog prints leading away from the coffin. Mrs. Biddulph returns, but she says she's never been down in the basement before. Really? Really?
Never
You buy
ever.
a house and you never even seen the basement.
Never ever. Yeah.
Well, later that evening, Caleb and Jim find Valda's body outside covered in blood. They follow the blood trail inside the house, and Jim goes back into the coffin and opens it up. Well, it's not empty anymore. There's an old corpse inside. Jim knows what's up, and he melts down a silver cross to make silver bullets. He waits for the coffin to open the next night. The thing inside gets out and goes after Mrs. Biddulph, and he shoots it several times, but it doesn't work.
Uh-oh.
Turns out things aren't quite what Jim thought.
Huh.
And the next story is called...
The Creeping Vine.
And this I thought was the weakest of the group. The next man, Bill Rogers, he tries the cards also. Well, Bill's going on holiday, and when he returns, he finds an ugly vine crawling up the outside of the house. He can't cut it with his hoe or his clippers. That's a tough plant. Bill calls in an expert to identify the plant and watches the plant kill the family dog. Okay.
That ain't normal.
He thinks the plant may have mutated and evolved intelligence enough to know who its enemies are. He finds a brain in his microscope. He doesn't see the vine creeping in the window behind him until it strangles him. Then it cuts the phone line and traps them inside. Mr. Hopkins gets out by using fire, but he leaves the family behind to die.
So he gets away.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Third story. Voodoo. Well, Biff goes next. You just don't meet enough people named Biff these days.
No, hardly ever.
He's a musician, and his agent just got him a new gig in the West Indies. It turns out he offends the cigarette girl, and the local band leader points out that they're into voodoo there, and many people are into it.
Like everybody.
Yeah, it's everybody. Well, the band leader warns Biff to stay away from them. Naturally, Biff follows them out later that night to watch them do their voodoo dance out in the jungle, and he starts to write down the notes for their music, maybe to use in his act. So he's like a rock musician or whatever passed for it in 65, and he wants to use the voodoo beat. Well, they catch him in the act. The priest says the great goddamn Bala will get revenge on Biff for stealing from him. And if you've ever watched the Chucky movies, you know about Damballa.
Damballa.
Well, they return to civilization, and Biff does, in fact, incorporate voodoo music into his act.
What could go wrong?
He plays the voodoo-inspired tune at the club, and the doors start opening and closing in the wind, which has suddenly begun to pick up. Suddenly, it gets really windy, and papers and junk starts flying everywhere. The patrons start to get up and leave, but the band keeps on playing. And then Biff takes the music home with him to refine it. And he returns home to find Damballa in his living room.
Nobody uses Damballa's music without permission.
Yeah, it's a copyright infringement.
That was Roy Castle's premiere, first movie.
Roy Castle.
The guy playing Biff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Disembodied Hand is the next story. And Mr. Franklin Marsh is a skeptic of the tarot cards and also an art critic as a profession. You know, if you're in a horror movie, don't be an art critic. Have you ever seen an art critic survive a horror movie?
It always ends poorly for them.
It's like the directors and writers of horror movies don't care so much for critics.
Yeah, maybe.
He really hates the work of Eric Landor. The two men argue over the worth of Mr. Landor's work, and he then looks at a new artist and loves the work. And it turns out it was done by a chimpanzee. Everyone has a good laugh at Marsh, especially Landor. He can't tell good art from chimpanzee scribblings. Well, Landor starts following Marsh around, messing with his concentration and his sanity. Marsh doesn't like these games, and he runs over Landor with his car. Landor loses his hand in the accident, and Landor kills himself shortly afterwards. Can't be a painter without an arm. So around the same time, Marsh starts seeing a disembodied hand crawling in his car. He throws it out the window, but it follows him home.
It's a persistent hand.
It is. He burns it in the fireplace, but then gets a surprise at work the next day. He puts the hand in a box and throws it in the river. It'll never find him again, will it?
No, problem solved.
Never seen a hand in a movie give up. And the last story is called Vampire. Dr. Box Carroll? Is his name Box? Did I type that right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. He's a newlywed. He cuts himself on the can opener, and his new bride, Nicole, wants to lick the blood off. Okay.
Yeah, that's
Odd
a
fetish.
little odd, but we can go with that. Yeah.
The night after bedtime, she gets up, turns into a bat, and flies out the window. Not so normal. She meets Dr. Blake, Bob's doctor partner.
His name is not Box, it's Bob.
Bob. Yeah, it's
Bob.
so much fun.
You know, it sounded right, but no. I'm looking at the credits information. It's Bob.
As you know, Box.
Yeah.
It's a very common name. Yeah. Well, there's a strange case of anemia at the hospital this morning. One boy there just doesn't have enough blood, and there are bite marks on his neck.
Whatever could it mean?
Well, Blake jokes that it looks like a vampire. But hey, they know that couldn't be real.
That's just crazy.
Blake took blood samples for testing, and when Bob explains this to Nicole, she's very interested in where Blake's lab is located. The bat attacks Drake, but he scares it off by making a cross with his arms. Okay.
That was easy.
The little boy returns to the hospital, and Drake wants to spend the night watching the boy to see what happens. He shoots the bat. Nicole comes home with a wounded hand. Drake knows it's Nicole, and he starts sharpening wooden stakes.
Oh, no.
He tells Bob all about vampires and how to kill them. And that night, Bob stakes his wife. The police thinks he's crazy, and they'd probably be right. Dr. Blake comes in and denies knowing anything about vampires. I don't know what you're talking about, he says. The police carry Bob out, arrested for murdering his wife. This town isn't big enough for 2 doctors. Or 2 vampires. Dr. Blake smiles and turns into a bat.
Got rid of the competition.
Both competitors. And each and every time with this, the final card, which explains how to avoid the future, always comes up with the death card for all 5 of them.
Turns out Cushing is a poopy head. He's just playing with them. He's toying with them.
They all come to the conclusion that none of them actually have a future. They're all already dead. Dr. Shrek / Dr. Terror vanishes, leaving nothing but his cards.
He's kind of the ferryman here.
Yeah. The train stops and they all disembark in hell.
Or purgatory or
They
something.
They read the newspaper headline. Train crashes, 5 dead. So yeah, none of this stuff really happened. They all died on the train. Well, these guys are all having a really bad day. The story with the creeping vine was pretty dumb. Although fortunately it was pretty short. The werewolf story could have been a little bit longer, but the others were all just about right. The acting was decent. It was fine.
It was fine. Yeah, it was.
About the only actor who really didn't fit here was Christopher Lee. His role was as a whiny art critic, and it was very out of character for him, and no, I don't think he really pulled it off.
Not quite.
Yeah, it really...
It was kind of off.
Of course they want Christopher Lee in their film, but yeah, not this one. Peter Cushing was fine, but despite being the titular character, his role wasn't that big.
Yeah, he was just the connector.
Yeah.
He wasn't in the actual stories.
He probably could have finished that whole scene that all his scenes, because he broke up between
They
them.
might have filmed that in a day.
They probably did.
Or less. Film it in an afternoon. The connecting segments.
Yeah. Well, moving forward to 1981,
The Monster Club.
The Monster Club.
I thought this one was pretty fun.
I had seen this before a couple of times and didn't really remember the name.
Yeah, I think
Monster Club is pretty
quite a
generic.
while ago.
Yeah. But it's good.
Yeah.
Directed by Roy Ward Baker, written by R. Chetwynd Hayes and Edward Abraham, stars Vincent Price, John Carradine, Anthony Steele, hour and 44 minutes. And you can get this, pick up on the DVD or Blu-ray on Amazon, or you can watch it on Shudder.
This is the only time that Vincent Price played a vampire in his
Is it?
entire career.
Really?
It is, yeah.
Didn't he do it like on The Muppet Show or something? You're talking in movies.
Oh, and his career in horror and other roles and everything. No, he wasn't in. No, not on.
I know I've seen pictures of him dressed like Dracula.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think
Okay,
they
maybe.
were in movies. It was just,
Okay.
silly appearances later on.
Yeah, all right.
R. Chetwynd Hayes is a horror author who's walking down the street and he runs into Aramis, a down-on-his-luck vampire who says he hasn't eaten in a week. And it turns out R. Chetwynd Hayes is played by Robert Carradine, and that is exactly the same name as the guy who wrote the story. So he put himself in
the story, in the
Yeah.
movie. Yeah.
So allegedly this is based on true events, I guess you could say.
Inspired by true events. Yeah.
Yeah. So Chetwynd Hayes offers to help Aramis, who drinks what he needs. He bites him and drinks the blood. Turns out Aramis is a fan of Chetwynd Hayes' books, and he says everyone likes to read about themselves and their own kind. Now Aramis owes him something, and he offers material for his next book. Turns out he has 4 very unusual friends that would love to meet Chetwynd Hayes, and he wants to take him to the Monster Club. And Aramis is Vincent Price.
Yep, yes.
All right, so you do a little vampire a favor, and he's going to give you some stories.
Uh-huh, and he does.
Yeah, he takes him to the club, and it's full of people that are in monster masks. And honestly, we couldn't tell if these were supposed to be real monsters. At first, we couldn't tell.
I think it might be it might have supposed to have been a mix.
No, and I think at the end they explain that Chetwynd Hayes is going to be their first human member.
Okay.
I think all those things
those
were really supposed to be real monsters.
Okay, they didn't put a lot of effort into those special effects.
No, they were people in Halloween masks. Yes.
So we overlook and forgive that. The stories were good. The connecting the banter between the Carradine and Vincent Price was very fun, and yeah, I liked.
Don't pay too much attention to the crowd.
Just disregard those masks.
Yeah.
The others, the effects in the stories themselves were pretty good.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a live band playing monster songs, and most of the staff there are vampires.
And that one song in particular, I really liked that gal sang.
You kept trying to find the soundtrack.
And I cannot find it anywhere. Yeah.
Well, Aramis complains about horror movies educating people about vampires and monsters. You go see the movies, you learn how to defend yourself, and that's just not good. It's just not fair to vampires everywhere. Aramis then goes into this long spiel about the monster evolutionary chart, and it's like a human plus a ghoul makes a hume-ghoul, and there's all these dozens of names. He just really rattles these things off.
And it's really a complicated chart. And
yeah. Well, the bottom of the line of the evolutionary chart ends in Shadmox, which is the lowest of the monster hierarchy. And he says all Shadmox do, all they do is whistle.
And they're kind of like ghouls, and they have a deadly whistle.
Yeah.
And a fun part of the trivia, the poster, that flowchart was painted first, and then they cast, and the guy that they cast ended up looking, well, I think you're probably going to mention that, the Shadmox story.
They cast him because he looked like the poster they drew.
Well, not necessarily deliberately, but it ended up that way. Yeah.
It's got to be the best casting call ever. Hey, he looked just like the poster.
Yeah.
All right, well, the first story is called The Shadmox Story. And you know all about vampires. You know all about where You know, vampires and... Okay, I won't do the
No, you don't have to do the spiel. It's
But
okay.
do you know Shadmocks?
Well,
chances are you don't.
You will after this story.
I don't know that they even existed before this film. Well, we fade into the first tale. A couple of young criminals look for work in the paper. They find a job at a huge house working for a rich man, and they think they can get in there and rob him. Mr. Raven answers the door, and his house is full of antiques that need to be cataloged.
So he needs a personal assistant.
Yeah. Well, she freaks out and leaves, but then comes back later because she needs the work.
You know, and that freak out, I mean, he's kind of pale and ghastly looking.
He doesn't look that
He
bad.
doesn't look that frightening.
No. Maybe he gave off pheromones or something. We don't know.
Yeah. But the way she freaked out and ran, you know.
He's
what?
a pale-looking guy, but
Really?
he's not monstrous.
No, not really.
But anyway, she goes back because she needs the work. And he says he can never leave the house or go outside the grounds. He loves to feed his birds outside, but he doesn't see the cat sneaking onto the property. We see the cat.
Yeah, poor
Well,
kitty cat.
Raven soon starts giving Angela flowers. He likes her a lot. Angela starts feeling sorry for him, and she wants out of the plan to rob him. But a cat kills one of his birds, and then we see the Shadmock whistle. And the cat is melted with his ultrasonic blast. Wow, that's quite a whistle.
Yeah, sure was.
Raven proposes to Angela. She just can't do it. He admits that he's a Shadmock, and that he must never whistle. She agrees to marry him anyway, and she notices the safe combination as he gives her a ring. And he gives her a ring that's like, basketball size. It's huge diamond.
Yeah, he's incredibly rich. Well, he's immortal, and he's accumulated all this stuff for centuries.
Yeah, he's very rich. So then there's this masked ball, of course. And all of Raven's freaky relatives are there, all covered in masks, of course. She runs off in the middle of the dance and opens the safe, not realizing that Raven is following her. She calls him horrible and screams at him. And he whistles, and the entire party stops.
Yeah, they know what's what.
Yep.
Yeah.
Party's not over till the fat Shadmock whistles. Well, Angela returns home to her boyfriend, not dead, but her face is pretty much gone.
Yeah.
Worst whistle ever.
That was a pretty bad whistle.
Yeah.
I can't whistle better, so, yeah.
That's pathetic. So speaking of next story,
There's vampires.
the vampire story is next. And this young boy is warned by his mother not to talk to strangers. They live in a big isolated house, and his father sleeps all day.
I wonder why.
That night, the father wakes up, and we see that he's a vampire. His wife nags at him about getting too bloody. Someone might think he was a butcher, although he does dress like a waiter. Feed without greed is his motto, and he must always be on the lookout for men carrying violin cases. His son waves goodbye as the man goes out for the evening. The next day at school, we see a man dressed like a priest watching the sun. He offers him some candy and walks him home. Men with violin cases start following them.
Uh-oh.
The boy gets curious and goes down into the basement to see where his father sleeps. He's not allowed down there, but the priest has convinced him it would be okay. He sees the father sleeping in his coffin and runs off, only to be grabbed by the violin case men. They are called the B Squad, a special branch concerned with blood crimes. Well, they all go downstairs and find the vampire asleep. They open up their violin cases to reveal stakes and mallets. They stake the vampire, but he reaches up and bites the vampire hunter Pickering before dying.
And so then the B Squad has to deal with Pickering.
Yeah, and he changes fast, too. His men want to stake him now, as he immediately sprouts fangs. They stake him and carry the body back out to their van, and the sad music plays as the mother and son go back down to the crypt to find father still with a stake in his heart. Oh, no, wait, he sits up and he's fine. He's wearing a stake-proof vest filled with ketchup.
Faked him out.
Wow, a stake-proof vest.
And there was a lot of dark humor, especially in this one.
This one was purely
that one
comedy. There was nothing serious to it.
The funniest by far, yeah. They were all a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but that one especially.
I don't know. You think the first one was really all that tongue-in-cheek? I didn't see
Yes.
that much funny with the first one.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was. Yeah, and this. Yeah, I think they all were.
All right.
Yeah, but that one especially, the vampire one.
And the third story is the Humgoo story. And we're told by Aramis again that a Humgoo is a cross between a human and a ghoul. We start out with a film director working on a horror film, and he wants to make a horror film in an eerie, atmospheric village. He's going to go out and do some location scouting himself. He drives to Lowville, a place that looks interesting on his map. And he drives over a foggy bridge, and on the other side is an abandoned village that looks just perfect for a horror film. It's got a cemetery, ancient-looking buildings, and no one lives there. Suddenly, there are dozens of creepy people, all dressed in gray, and naturally his car won't start.
Turns out people do live there.
And his engine has been trashed. They insist that he spend the night at the inn. They force him inside, and the innkeeper's daughter brings him some rabbit stew. Her name is Luna. She says her clothes came from the boxes. The boxes come from the cemetery on gathering night.
And as she slowly fills this in, and he slowly realizes what she's talking about.
What these boxes are.
What? Oh,
They get
you
their
dig those up.
Food from the boxes as well.
Oh.
But there's no more boxes in the cemetery.
They harvested them all.
She's a Humgoo. Her mother was human and her father was a ghoul. She explains, "We must have our food."
They can eat rabbit, but apparently that's not sufficient.
Yeah, human flesh is the best. That's what I always say. Well, he runs and hides in the church, and they can't follow him in there. He finds a book that tells the story of this cursed town. The town priest rescued a ghoul, cleaned it up, and took it into his own household. Until he found it feeding in the cemetery. They drove it away, and 12 more returned.
Isn't that how it always works with ghouls?
Yeah.
It's like houseflies, you just,
Give them one,
kill
before
one,
long
and
you get
suddenly
12
there's,
of them there.
Yeah.
Well, Luna joins him inside the church. She can come and go, as she wants to. She says there will be no escape once the elders come. And they run for the bridge in the mists. They make it through the mist, but Luna gets hit by a rock thrown by someone behind them and dies. He flags down the police, and they take him right back to the town. Turns out the elders always get a police escort when they return to Loughton.
And they've got fresh meat.
Yeah. So Aramis, back in the club, thinks these would all make great stories, and he wants to put up Chetwin Hayes for a membership in the club. He's a human, which is the greatest monster of them all. And he gives this long speech about humans came up with the atomic bomb and war and disease, and humans are far worse than the other monsters.
Yeah, they've got a much higher body count than any monster.
And they mentioned that he's going to be the very first human in the club. So that's what tipped us off that those
That's
other
right, I
people are
forgot
just
about
people
that.
in weird,
they're
cheap masks.
supposed to be monsters. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he makes his case.
So his membership is quickly approved and celebrated, and there's time for one more song. Welcome to the Monster Club.
All right.
All right, well, the songs in the club are long and not really all that entertaining.
Yes, they were.
All right, we have a disagreement
Okay,
there.
there's one of the songs especially I really liked.
Okay.
And I liked them all, but the one especially.
I know the one that played over the closing credits I had in my head for the next 3 days.
Yeah, that was
and
a
it
catchy
wasn't
one.
good.
It was a catchy one. Yeah.
Monster Club's okay. Yeah, that was pretty much it. Repeated over and over. All right, so apparently the jury is out on the songs in the club, but they are definitely a unique feature of the film. They're between each of the segments there is a song, and the performers are all real musicians, just none that ever had much of a successful career that I can tell.
No, I looked up some and couldn't really couldn't find anything.
They may have had like records out in the 70s or 60s, early 80s, but yeah, it never went anywhere. None of them got big. So the clients in the club are pretty ridiculous. A bunch of people wearing really cheesy rubber masks. They didn't even seriously give this a try, and it's kind of hilarious because they're supposed to be monsters. And the whole thing is pretty tongue-in-cheek and has a lot of humor in it. The wraparound story is silly fun, and the Shadmock and Humgoo stories aren't that funny, but the vampire story is just pure comedy without a bit of seriousness. That one had Donald Pleasance as the head vampire hunter.
In a funny role.
Oh, yeah.
He
He wasn't trying.
He's funnier than he was in Halloween.
Yeah, he was. Well, the stories are long enough to have a lot going on, but not long enough to become boring, which always seems to be a hard to accomplish thing with an anthology. You don't want them too short, you don't want them too long either, and all three of these stories were just about right. And I remember seeing this one when it first came out, and it's pretty much exactly what I remember, a fun anthology that was well made and fun to watch. Vincent Price and John Carradine needed a paycheck, and this was a fun way for them to cash in, but it was all good, and it was all worth it.
And I read that it opened on Vincent Price's 70th birthday.
Oh, okay.
He was 69 when they were working on it, and 70 when it came out.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure what year he died. Maybe in the early 90s? Long time.
He was up there.
He got a lot older, and so this wasn't really close.
No.
Carradine was looking pretty bad in that one.
He was up there. They were both up there.
Yeah. Well, that takes us to our next film, probably the newest one on the list, Tales from the Campfire 3. I said that wrong earlier. It's just hard to say Campfire today.
Tales from the Campfire 3.
3, yes. So there were 2 more of these things.
We haven't seen the first 2.
No, we have not. We got, this was in 2020, directed by Dustin Ferguson, stars Mel Novak, Noel Jason Scott, Ken May, and we were surprised to see that it was only around 45 minutes, so it's not that long. It was short. So what'd you think?
Needed more Mel.
All these films need more Mel.
They do. Yeah.
Starring Mel Novak, and he's in it for like a minute and a half, most of these films.
This one seemed especially short, yeah.
Yeah.
He's a doctor who, just has a short little scene.
Very short, yeah.
I don't know, there's something about Mel Novak. I always dig him. He always shows up and does the work, and
he's one of those guys, he'll be in anything.
And he's always convincing in the role. And, I bet he's just great to work with. I bet he just shows up and just, I get the impression he's ready and super professional and good to work with. And
I follow him on Facebook.
Yeah. So anyway, I always say, needs more Mel. I need to get it, if I ever go to a horror convention or anything, especially if he's there, that'd be awesome. Like, get a picture taken with him with a shirt that says, needs more Mel. Yeah.
Okay, well, we start off, we hear a story about a hit and run with a werewolf as the credits roll. There's no visuals, it's just the audio as the credits go by. As the credits end, a group of friends get together in front of the campfire. They plan to tell scary stories, and they each think they have a winner. And the first guy tells a story about an online internet order. The story is called The Wee One. It starts in Western Africa in a souvenir shop. Someone buys a little native warrior doll that looks exactly like the one from that 70s anthology that you've already seen so many times.
Well, I don't know about exactly, but yeah, somebody saw that Karen Black one and was inspired by it for sure.
Yeah. And it's...
You probably mentioned that in your commentary.
I did, yes. Yeah, it's the Trilogy of Terror from 1975 is that one. And if you haven't seen the Trilogy of Terror from 75...
That's a good one.
I have no idea what the other 2 stories in that trilogy was, but the one with the little African doll is iconic. To
the doll that goes...
and chases her all over the house. Yeah, you've seen it. You've had to have seen it. Well, this little guy in this film is called the Violator. And the girl takes a phone call, and when she returns, the doll is gone. Or is it? Unfortunately, the story, however, is shorter than the doll.
It was short.
Yeah, we know what happened, but we don't see anything much. This is way shorter than it should have been. All right, so the next story is called Coal Canyon Creeps. And in this one, a woman stops and checks her map. She's lost on her street. As the sun goes down, she can tell she's being followed. And this is in a town somewhere. It's not like out in the desert. Her phone is dead, and she's desperate to find someplace that's open so she can call for a ride. She spins around, and the bad guy gets her.
Another shorty.
That seemed like a short one.
Well, the whole thing was only 45 minutes, or 40-ish minutes, so yeah, they were all pretty short.
Yeah, there's 5 stories in 45 minutes plus the wraparound story, so yeah, I'm seeing a pattern developing here.
Shortness.
The third story is called The Prisoner. And it's about an agoraphobic woman who has heard about an escaped mental patient. Oh, And it's also its Halloween night.
What a coincidence.
There's a ring at the doorbell just as she turns on Night of the Living Dead. By the time she gets to the door, no one's there. The same thing happens again, and she has had enough of this. Except now she hears someone upstairs. Except it's just a dream.
Or is it?
The fourth story is called The Bitter Half. Dr. Chalice is talking to a patient named Jason, who had an imaginary twin brother. Chalice says the man is cured and hands him a release form. Chalice graduated from the University of Doom, according to the diploma on the wall. Man, I want to go there.
That was such a nice touch.
Where'd you go to medical school anyway? The University of Doom.
And that's Mel's role.
Yeah, it is.
He's the doctor.
Dr. Chalice. Well, Jason goes home and starts hearing his brother's voice. The next story, the final story, is called The Gateway. This starts out at the Halfway House Cafe, and some people want to go up on the hill and see if the devil will show up like the legend says. It gets dark as they get to the old cemetery, and they brought their camera along. Turns out they see the devil, and the guy starts vomiting blood. And then he grabs the girl.
Uh-oh.
Meanwhile, back at the campfire, they all pull out weapons and kill the stalker in the woods. What?
The wraparound story.
What?
That's what it was all about.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, it was short.
The wraparound story made no sense either.
It was short and abrupt. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. I saw what they were trying to accomplish.
They went out to the campfire to tell these stories just to draw in the stalker.
Yeah, and killed him.
Was this explained before the stories?
If you were paying attention.
I guess I wasn't.
Yeah.
I missed something.
Yeah,
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's go through these one at a time. The wee one is obviously based on 1975's Trilogy of Terror, and it had a lot of promise. It was looking really good. And then it ended just as it was getting started.
Yeah, that was disappointing.
Yeah, it was only 5 minutes long, and we were like, wait, that's it?
That was so, noticeably short.
Yeah, noticeably way too short.
Yeah.
If any of these needed more, it was that one.
I agree.
Coal Canyon Creeps was literally a woman walking down the street until she dropped her phone.
Yeah, there didn't seem to be a lot to that one.
Yeah, this is just, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a reason they included it, because, I don't know.
Yeah, it's okay. It was all right.
And The Prisoner was literally just a woman afraid to answer her door on Halloween.
Well, it was a little more intense than that, but yeah, that's the gist of it.
The Bitter Half was fine, but also just far too short. The Gateway was pretty basic as well, although the creature, which may have been CGI, did look pretty cool in this one.
Yeah, it did.
The wraparound story had no real context. Apparently the guy at the end had killed their brothers and sisters, and this whole episode was a ploy to get him to reveal himself, which we're told after it happens.
The credits, the opening,
the opening credits were about a werewolf.
No, we're hinting. You didn't pay enough attention.
I guess not.
I saw what I had an inkling of what was going on, and yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, to tell you the truth, we were expecting something about twice as long. There's no mention of the runtime on the DVD box or on IMDb, so we kind of went into this blind from what to expect.
Yeah, a little surprised how short it was.
Yeah. And we were shocked at how short the stories were. Some were barely 5 minutes long and only had one person in them. Yes, we watch a lot of short films here with the horror guys, but some of these actually really needed a lot more to justify inclusion here.
But all in all, I give this words of praise, and I mean, there's people, some people like Mel and who's the actress, Donna Lee Heising, who have done tons of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Some of the actors are a lot less experienced in this, and I hope the director and these actors and stuff go on to do more things and just keep working and keep getting better.
No, always, yes.
Yeah. All in all, I think it's praiseworthy.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
So, next we have, how do you even say this?
XX. XX.
I like mine better.
I don't think he pronounced it.
Okay, it's XX or maybe double X. It's an all-woman written and all-woman directed anthology. XX is for 2X chromosomes. And it's from 2016, so it's not super new. Directed by Roxanne Benjamin, Sophia Carrillo, and others. Written by Jovanka Vukovic and Jack Ketchum. Stars Natalie Brown, Jonathan Watton, Peter Dacuna, and a whole bunch of other people because it's an anthology.
Yep, big cast.
Runtime, hour and 20 minutes, and there's a link in the show notes, as always.
Did you like it?
I did like this one.
Yeah, me too.
Turns out I had seen it before, not that long ago, and didn't remember the name.
Okay.
So this was the second time watching it for me.
Oh, okay. I had never seen it. No.
And I swear we saw it together.
No? No.
Before we were doing horror, guys, but it hadn't been that long.
No, I'm sure I've never seen it.
I can't imagine
Had
how I
never
would have
seen
seen this without you.
I've seen it now, but yeah.
Okay, so this one is a 4-segment anthology with all 4 parts directed by women. First one is called The Box. Oh, I didn't ask. Did you like them?
Yeah, I did.
All of them, you think? Or...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was good.
And the wraparound story wasn't really a wraparound story in this one. It was a weird animation kind of thing.
Yeah, okay.
Stop motion animation.
Yeah, it wasn't really a story.
Really strange dolls and dollhouse and monstrous little toys. And, it was interesting, but very weird.
Weird little animated things going on. It's not really a story. Just you go back to the
adventures of this dollhouse, sort of.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, the first one's called The Box, and a woman explains how difficult it is to go into the city with 2 young children. One of the children, Danny, asks the man sitting next to him on the subway, "What's in the box?"
What's in the box?
The man opens the box just a crack to show Danny what's in there. Danny is clearly disturbed by what he sees. He doesn't eat dinner that night. He doesn't eat the next night either.
But he doesn't tell anybody what's in the box either.
No, he's not going to say.
No.
Danny has completely lost his appetite. 3 days pass, and he just won't eat anything. "I'm not hungry," he says. Well, they take him to the doctor, who thinks it may be an emotional problem.
But he checks out fine. There's nothing wrong with him.
Danny has a long talk alone with Jenny, his sister. The next day, she stops eating as well.
It's contagious.
Danny whispers his secret into Dad's ear that night, and Mom realizes this all started with the man in the box on the train. Months pass, and soon the 2 children and husband are in the hospital on life support. They have starved themselves nearly to death. Mom starts riding the subway looking for the mysterious man with the box.
Yeah, I thought this was creepy.
Yeah.
Very creepy, unsettling.
Well, and of course the big question is what
was in the box? What was that bad? Yeah. Despair. Despair was in the box.
Despair, yes. They weren't unhappy. They just wouldn't eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's in the box? Hunger.
Something.
Well, the next story is called The Birthday Party.
And this was just a hoot.
Mary and her servant Carla are getting ready for Lucy's birthday party. She finds her husband's dead body in his office, but she has to go on with the show. The party must go on. Carla's roaming the house, and Mary decides to hide the body to keep things on schedule. The neighbor woman comes over for a chat, and she wants an invitation to the children's birthday party too. So apparently this is one of those big upper-class, yuppie kind of neighborhoods.
Very much so, yeah. Appearances are everything.
The dancing pandagram guy comes to the door, and she offers him $1,000 for his panda suit.
$1,000 and I've got some leftover medical marijuana from when I had my foot surgery or something like that.
He's not going to say no.
She keeps upping the offer, and finally, well, okay.
Well, she puts her dead husband inside the panda suit, thinking that'd be a great place to hide the body. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Then all the children arrive in their costumes with many parents in tow. They all have the birthday party, and the giant panda is the center of attention, right there in front of the birthday cake and everyone, until things go from bad to worse.
That was a great story.
Yeah, it was.
It was.
And the next story is called Don't Fall. A group of hikers makes it to the top of the plateau. It's got a great view out here in the desert. They find an old cave painting and take a photo of it. They think it might be a historic site and illegal to camp there. Maybe it's even cursed.
And they find out, yeah, it sure is.
The night progresses and the full moon rises. Gretchen wakes up and she's in a prehistoric cave with a monster. Jay comes outside and finds her, changed into the monster. And then things get violent.
Things get ugly.
And that takes us to our final story, called Her Only Living Son.
This one, I thought, was maybe my favorite. Well, I mean, the birthday party was fun. But, yeah, this one was kind of thought-provoking, and I thought the most interesting of them.
Yeah. Well, a woman remembers something that happened to her 18 years ago. Then she looks in on her son, Andy, who is about to turn 18. The boy's father is a Hollywood producer. Later on, she finds a squirrel nailed to a tree outside. Chet the mailman asks Nora out, but she can't leave her son alone. She's called into school because her son tore off a girl's fingernails. Ew?
Ew.
They've all heard the stories about Andy. Your son needs real help, and if you can't see that, apparently so do you, says the girl's mother. The principal at school is firmly in Andy's corner. She's clearly one of his followers. He's a truly remarkable human being, says the principal. That night, Nora dreams about the birth of her son, 18 years ago. Chet the mailman tells her not to fight with Andy anymore. His real father is coming to claim him soon. Chet says he's heard the story many times and he's been watching over them for years. Andy wants to know who his real father is. Then his real father comes for him. And it turns out this story is an unofficial follow-up to Rosemary's Baby.
And I thought that was interesting with the people. It had a touch of the Omen to it, with
The
people,
followers helping him out, yeah.
people who know what he is and are okay with that and supporting him, watching over him, kind of.
Yeah, I like that one too. I like them all in this one.
I liked them all. I think this was probably my favorite.
Okay. Well, let's see. The creature effects in Don't Fall are pretty good. The emaciated children in the box are pretty good too. There's no special effects in the surprise party, but the story is hilarious. The fourth story is probably the most intense, but it's also kind of a sequel to a story you've already seen, so the main part of that story has already been told. Rosemary Baby. Yeah. So I really liked all four stories, and the animated bits between the segments don't really tell a story, but they're definitely weird. The thread running through all the stories is that they're all directed by women, which explains the 2X chromosome title. And actually, though, I honestly can't say I see much difference between these and horror stories directed by men. They all do take a female point of view, and so do many male-directed films. The stories are all fine. It just seems like kind of a thin premise for naming the film that.
Well, and I think that makes that point, that women can do this just as well as men, and they're not given enough opportunity in Hollywood, and the business historically is so male-oriented and male-dominated, and I think this was a positive step, saying, yeah, look, women can do this just as well, so let's have more of that. They're just as qualified.
I suppose not being able to tell the difference is really what they're going for.
Yeah, every bit is good,
All right, now, my favorite of the week, I think, is Tales of Halloween 2015.
I think these were all consistently the best, yeah.
Yeah, well, I like the old films because you can't go wrong with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing and Vincent Price. But yeah, of the newer ones, I like this one the best.
Mm-hmm.
Tales of Halloween 2015, directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, Axel Carolyn, and others. Written by Axel Carolyn and Dave Parker, stars Adrienne Barbeau, Hunter Smith, and Cameron Easton, and a bunch of other people.
Big cast.
Yeah,
this was
10 stories here.
Huge cast in this one, yeah.
Runtime, hour and 37 minutes. And clearly this is a Hollywood thing, just you can tell that by the people that are in it. So there's 10 short stories, and yeah, I'm not going to go into quite as much detail with all 10 of them. But we'll look at each 10 briefly.
Very briefly, yeah.
Mostly spoiler-free.
And Adrienne Barbeau is the connector. She's a DJ talking about, it's Halloween night and weird things happen in this town, as you all know.
And we hear from her in the beginning and the end, and just
and
a little bit between other shows, but she's not in every one.
Another weird thing happening in the town. They're all take place in this same town on Halloween night.
And I don't think we see her at all. It's just strictly a voice thing. She's not really there.
I think we do, don't we? Briefly. I think we do. I think we do see her briefly.
It's been a while. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, the first story is called Sweet Tooth. And a little boy's parents eats all his candy for Halloween, so he cuts them open to get the candy bars they ate. And now he returns every year for his due. So this story happened, I don't know, in the 50s or 60s. And yeah, he's this little kid that killed his parents, and now he's haunting the neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
Second one, The Night Billy Raised Hell. It's about this little boy who is talked into egging a house and then ends up meeting his next-door neighbor, who is literally the devil.
And
I think this is my favorite.
This was my favorite, too.
Yeah.
And they're all really good, but yeah, this was the favorite.
Barry Bostwick as the devil.
And he was really good.
Third one is called Trick. A group of adults are having a get-together, and it's all going well until a little trick-or-treat girl stabs one of them. Actually, it looks like every child in town has become a murderer.
But there's a reason.
Number 4, The Weak and the Wicked. A nerdy kid is bullied on Halloween, but the bullies find someone larger to pick on. They pursue on their bicycles, at least until the stroke of midnight.
And things go badly.
5, Grim Grinning Ghost. And there we hear about Mary Bailey, a woman who is tortured and killed for having a disfigured face. They are warned not to turn around as she follows you home. And one of the women then has to walk home. Will the ghost of Mary Bailey steal her eyes? Maybe.
Maybe. We'll find out.
The 6th story, called Ding Dong. A childless couple have difficulties on Halloween.
That's quite the couple. Quite the dysfunctional relationship they have.
Number 7, This Means War. I also like this one.
Yes. Yeah.
Neighbors compete over who has the best Halloween display in their front yards. And the battle of horrors escalates.
Talk about some elaborate Halloween displays.
You know, there's people in every neighborhood who could totally do this.
And then they start competing? Yeah. What could go wrong?
Yeah. Number 8 is Friday the 31st. A girl runs from a Jason clone. He gets the girl, but we then see that there's always a bigger fish.
With a touch of science fiction.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yep. Number 6, The Ransom of Rusty Rex. 2 kidnappers nab Rusty Rex, the child of a very rich man. You've made a very terrible mistake, you poor bastards, warns the father.
Not quite the reaction the kidnappers were looking for.
For some reason, Dad doesn't want his son back. Wait, is that Bat Boy from the National World News?
There was a resemblance.
And the last one is called Bad Seed, where we learn it's not too smart to make your jack-o'-lanterns look too good. What harm can a hungry pumpkin do in one evening? And this one tries to tie in the other stories together a little bit.
And there is little bits here and there throughout them that ties it together, where you can tell it is in the same town. And I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah. And the wraparound story with Adrienne Barbeau as the DJ, it isn't really a story, just a voiceover thing. But she does tie them together.
Mm-hmm.
And the credits give a small preview of what's to come as we zoom over an animated model of a small town. The opening credits give a very Creepshow vibe, and Adrienne Barbeau's DJ character leads us into each segment.
And coincidentally, Adrienne Barbeau was in Creepshow, too.
That's very true.
Yeah.
This is not a low-budget film. The cast list is ridiculous for this kind of thing, and none of it's taken remotely seriously.
Oh, some of it is.
Not too much.
Remotely seriously.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of humor here, and some of it is really excellent. Clearly, with the time constraints, they can't go into anything too deep with 10 stories. But what's here is all really good. There's not really a stinker in the batch. And that's saying something for 10 short films.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And huge cast.
Yeah. The most creative and goriest segment is easily Friday the 31st.
Yes.
What Jason does in that shed is kind of messy. And I think the funniest one was the
Very
night
juicy.
Billy raised hell.
Yep. I agree. Yeah.
All right, well, that is, I didn't count them, but it's got to be 20 plus films.
That's a lot of stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were thoroughly entertained this week.
Yeah. Okay, so that's our show. Get ready for next week, where we'll be watching some more classics. We've got The Man in Black from 1949. The Satanic Rites of Dracula, Hammer film from 73.
Christopher Lee again?
Again. The Amityville Harvest from 2020,
Okay.
and a short film called Post-Mortem Mary from this year. Ooh, fun stuff. And that's it for this week.
So,
We'll see you next time.
see you later.
See ya.